Hi, this is Dr. Tiffany Lamont from Lamont Wellness, and today I'm going to do another video sort of in my minimalist series. So I quite liked this little background recently to do these videos. One, it's pretty out here, and two, I like being outside in general. So I wanted to take a second to talk maybe about the little bit of the financial perspective without giving too many details. But one of the things that my husband and I are working toward is there's a whole movement called the FIRE movement, which when we started this, we didn't even know what that was. I'd never even heard of it. I still don't know if my husband knows what it is, but there are some people on YouTube that are doing a really good job teaching about it. I really like Our Rich Journey, super cute couple that are retired, young, living in Portugal, doing a really good job teaching others how to pursue FIRE, which is financial independence, retire early. So here's the thing, retirement to me doesn't mean that I won't work. I actually love what I do. I love treating patients, I love helping people. But what it means to me is that I have the financial ability to not work should I choose not to work. And there's a big difference to me. I love intellectual, physical challenge. But I really value my freedom. So during this process of progressive minimalism, something that we've worked really, really hard on and really put the pedal to the metal on is our retirement accounts. So I had mentioned in the previous video some of the initial purge, if you will, the initial transition, and sort of what sparked that and where that came from. And then through this whole process, the financial part kind of came later. So one of the reasons that we recently sold our second home is because we want to take that money and put it into our retirement accounts, because on a long-term basis, that more aligns with what we value, as well as when you own like a vacation home, you sort of feel guilty about not going there if you go somewhere else, and we really like to travel. So despite the fact that I would consider us somewhat minimalist-ish, progressing minimalist, we really, really value travel, and so I like to go lots of places. Now, in recent months, that's not been so possible. However, that's important to us, so I'm really hopeful that starts getting more normal again sometime really soon. But I thought I'd take a second to talk to you about some of the financial things in a general perspective that we did. So first of all, in order to calculate what we needed to consider ourselves able to retire was, and I'm going to give you a pretty simple formula, is figuring out how much money you need to live the lifestyle that you consider acceptable. Now, for some people that's $40,000 a year, and for some people that's $250,000 a year, and anywhere within that and outside of that. I mean, I have no idea where you sit on that perspective, and I'm not going to share the details of ours, but ultimately, if you figure out what that is and you multiply that number by 25, that gives you approximately what you would need in retirement accounts if you were to live off only 4% indefinitely. And that, again, I could go into some more detail in another video, or I could direct you to some other people that probably are way better equipped to teach you about that. But ultimately, if you take what you think your annual expenses would be, multiply that number by 25, and you have your investments in good retirement accounts that are not just cash equivalents, that you should be able to live off the 4% pretty much forever, barring no major crash in the economy like the Great Depression or something like that. But that should also, now how that comes from, there's a bunch of books I could recommend, etc. But there's an analysis of what the stock market has returned over the last, I think, is it 30 or 40 years? I want to say it was like 1977, something like that. Since that time, the average rate of return. And so obviously during that time, there's been dips, and then there's been, growth and so on. But if you're looking at it over time and you're in it for the long haul, that should work out pretty well for most people. So my husband and I calculated what that number should be, and then feverishly have been working toward it. Now, we always were contributing to our retirement accounts, but not to the extent that we are now. Part of how we've done that is we've eliminated several expenses from our lives. We have zero debt in the entire world. We have no consumer debt. We have no credit card. I'm sorry, that would be consumer debt. We have no car payments. We have no house payments. We have no school loans anymore, but you can rest assured that these are all things that at some point in our lives that we have, and we've learned why we never ever want to do any of that again. And then we did own our other house. We actually owned it outright, but when we sell it, we are going to take that money and put it into our retirement accounts, which will have a greater rate of growth. And I think that maybe the last point that I would make is that we have made our lives so that we can live off of approximately half of what we make. And, that's a matter of figuring out what you make and making your lifestyle fit that. And I'm just going to throw out random numbers. These do not necessarily reflect our personal numbers, but let's say you make $50,000 a year as a family and you live off of 25 of it and invest the other 25. Granted that, that's a very frugal way of living, but at the same time, you are living well below your means. So if something should kind of come as a bump in the road, you have a lot of margin where you can recover. Whereas, I was reading a statistic the other day that the average American does not have $400 in a safety net or a safety account, and that a $500 expense that will pop up can be devastating for them financially. And I know people that make really good money, and that's the case because their margin is so slim. And that's a very stressful place to be. As a matter of fact, I also read another statistic recently that the number one source of divorce is over finances. It's not adultery, or anything like that. It's money. So I have always been really aware of finances. Again, I grew up in a really challenging financial situation. I'm also extremely proud of my mother, who squeaked her way through as a single mother and was a really responsible human and did the best that she could. And I'm really, really proud of her. It was tough though. It was really, really tough. And my husband's mother was a very similar circumstance, and they did a great job. And I'd like to think they helped raise two pretty great humans. We try to do the right thing as much as possible. But at the same time, it also made us a little bit afraid. And fortunately, we're both well educated and we own our own businesses and we are doing just fine. That said, I want the ability to be financially totally independent. There's a whole lot of information that goes into all of that. That's just sort of a quick overview. And I think that's maybe what I'll do is I'll do a couple of videos that are sort of like the overview, and then depending on if people want to know more, I'll go into more detail. But ultimately, our financial minimalism, we also don't spend money on things that I think a lot of Americans would consider common. We don't really have any vices. There's no cigarettes, we don't buy coffee, we rarely eat out, we just generally don't buy a lot of stuff. And when we do, we put a great deal of thought into that now. Historically, when we were not so conscientious of that, we would be much more likely to buy something impulsively, and now it's much more thoughtful. And we are considering, does it have multiple purposes? Is it something that we're going to use regularly and for a long period of time? We still occasionally make what I would call mistake purchases, but in general, we are very conscientious about those things. I don't want to make it seem like we're misers or anything. We still want to be able to be generous and give to people and organizations that we believe in and want to support. But it's been a process. It's an ongoing process. It's gonna evolve over time. Who knows what we might decide in the next 5 years? Maybe all of this will have changed, but it seems to be for the last nearly 4 years, this is pretty focused. And for sure, the retirement thing, I would say in the last year, really, really became into focus for us. So hopefully there's an element of this you found helpful, and let me know in the comments below if you'd like some more details about this branch of minimalism, because it seems like there's several branches of minimalism. There's like aesthetic minimalism, and then there's financial minimalism, and then there's material minimalism, and then there's environmental minimalism, there's financial minimalism. So I think we dabble in a lot of those elements. So thanks so much for watching, and hope you enjoy this beautiful day.